Today in crypto, is Bitcoin getting ready for a big price run? Will a confluence of technical indicators and historical trends say yes? Some of the biggest and most successful investors in history right now are betting big on Bitcoin, and you would be crazy to bet against these guys. Ethereum futures have been launched over in the USA, and JP Morgan finally capitulates to Bitcoin, which is mega bullish and kind of funny too. The Crypto Lark. This is where you subscribe for all of the hottest and all of the latest happening out there in the wild land of crypto. A big thank you to Femex for sponsoring today's episode. Femex is an awesome place to trade the top altcoins like Tezos and Chainlink, as well as, of course, Bitcoin. And Femex even offers gold for trading as well. They also offer sub accounts, which allows for even more flexibility in your trading strategy. Generous leverage and high liquidity make it an excellent option for traders looking for an exchange with institutional architecture and a super user-friendly interface. Femex is only for experienced traders who properly understand how to manage their risk. There is a link down below where you can get signed up and claim up to a $112 trading bonus and get started trading today. Okay, so let's get into the charts now. First, a good shot of hopium there for you to get strapped in for today's episode. The last time Bitcoin had 7 green weekly candles followed by a red doji candle, it actually led to a massive surge in the price of Bitcoin. In fact, the price rallied by a whopping 160%. Now, it is just a pattern, and it is far from certain that this pattern will indeed happen again like it did previously, but it is just some awesome hopium for you, so put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, moving on to the 20-week moving average, we can see that Bitcoin has been respecting the 20-week moving average, which has been very nice. Obviously, we need to see this week confirmed to be sure that it is indeed respecting that line, but if it does hold above this line, then it actually drags us closer and closer towards a break of that massive 2-year downtrend for Bitcoin. That breakout moment, that could be coming very soon, or we could even have a few weeks of sideways action before it does break out. Remember, after the last halving, we also had some sideways action before we had our big price run up, so that could be a possibility here as well. But if Bitcoin does not break out here, then it means that a retest of $10,000 will have failed again, and that the moving averages, both the 20-week moving average and the 200-day moving average, have failed to act as important lines of support, and essentially that the bears are back in charge of the market. But actually, I think that we are looking quite bullish right now on the daily. You see, the 200-day moving average has just acted as a key line of support for the price of Bitcoin. In fact, we have even bounced back from that, seeing Bitcoin break out, come back down to retest, and now it appears to indeed be moving higher, is technically a very bullish move. And it could be setting us up for what could be a successful test of $10,000. It's got to break at some point, right? We have a lot of things coming together here for Bitcoin. Very exciting times. Definitely watching to see how all this plays out moving forward over the next couple of days. Now on to the first big story of the day. The first CFTC regulated Ethereum futures contracts have just gone live. Now these futures are only the second crypto asset after Bitcoin, of course, to pass the strict CFTC regulatory process. These futures contracts are physically delivered, meaning that trading requires buying Ethereum to back these contracts, unlike, of course, the CME's cash futures. This is definitely a cool thing to see, but keeping it real, this is from ErisX, and ErisX is far from being the biggest futures player by a long shot, but I do get the feeling that this is setting a precedent and that we will see the CME actually issuing Ethereum futures, potentially even sometime this year. In other Ethereum news, 1,000 newly wrapped Bitcoin have been issued on Ethereum. This one transaction alone locked up more Bitcoin on the Ethereum network than the entire Lightning Network combined. And that is just for wrapped Bitcoin. There are about 3 or 4 other wrapped Bitcoin variants right now, like TBDC and others. Now, until we actually get robust interchain operability, it seems that Bitcoin on Ethereum is going to be the way that Bitcoin gets meaningful access to the decentralized finance revolution. Okay, now moving on to what is just a delicious little story. JP Morgan has finally capitulated to Bitcoin. It is now being reported that Coinbase and Gemini have been accepted as banking customers for JP Morgan, which is the first time that the bank has actually accepted clients from the cryptocurrency industry. First, they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then they offer you banking services. That's the way it goes. Hopefully, this will actually result in better access for retail customers to be able to buy Bitcoin, since many banks, Chase included, have actually been denying purchases on Coinbase and other platforms to their customers when trying to buy with credit or debit cards. So it'd be really nice to see the turnaround in this policy. But JP Morgan finally capitulating and offering banking services to these exchanges. It could be a very good thing for the industry as a whole if we actually see restrictions imposed by banks eased, and of course more banks making it easier for people to buy crypto and for crypto companies to have access to banking services. But wow, this is quite the turnaround for JP Morgan. Remember what JP Morgan frontman Jamie Dimon had to say about Bitcoin back in 2017? He said Bitcoin is a fraud. And he also said that he would fire any employee caught trading Bitcoin. And now, JP Morgan has just accepted 2 of America's biggest Bitcoin exchanges as clients. Resistance is futile. The honey badger, it will make all bow before it. You're either on the Bitcoin train or you get run over by the Bitcoin train. That's your choice. And of course, what better time to be in Bitcoin than to be in Bitcoin right now? News out of the USA is indicating that the USA could be seeing negative rates sooner than later. Trump has tweeted that the USA should accept the gift of negative rates. Imagine calling that a gift. What a gift it will be to watch the bankers suck away 2% every year from your bank account. Gifts. And on top of that, you get the inflation rate, which is around 2%, which slowly devalues your money. More gifts. And then you're losing about 4% a year, all up. It's probably actually much more than that when you consider a variety of different factors. The game is rigged. No one is going to save you. You have to save yourself. The ship is sinking and Bitcoin is the life raft. And more we see it. The world's biggest investors are waking up to this very reality. As we go through the next few minutes in the video, I want you to ask yourself, are you really going to bet against some of the world's most wildly successful investors and their Bitcoin plays? First, let's hear from Mike Novogratz, who now has a great mustache, by the way, and of course he is the CEO of Galaxy Digital.
We're seeing at our shop just a huge increase in interest in Bitcoin and getting into crypto from high net worth individuals, from funds. Crypto's not easy to buy. It takes a while to get set to buy it. If it was easy to buy, it would be much higher. And so it doesn't happen overnight, but it feels like a herd is on its way, finally. I coined that phrase a long time ago, and I've been waiting and waiting for the institutional side. And I think this Tudor news is very big news because in some ways it takes the career risk of looking dumb out of buying Bitcoin. It credentializes it as a macro weapon. It might or might not work, but people aren't going to say, "Oh, you were a fool to do that." That's Tulos. No, it's now seen as a legitimate store of value, and I think it'll allow other hedge funds to participate as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few very interesting takeaways from what Mike said here. Yes, there is a huge interest coming from high net worth individuals and from institutional players. We've seen evidence of that from a lot of different sources already. That herd of big money, they're here, and it's only getting bigger as time goes on. It's going to eventually turn into a stampede of big money, followed by a stampede of retail. More and more Bitcoin is being taken seriously by the world's biggest and most successful investors, and he's absolutely right about Paul Tudor Jones entering Bitcoin Bitcoin, it has made it super serious for a whole new class of investors that might have still been on the sidelines thinking, Bitcoin, can we really be seen to be investing in that? Novogratz, he didn't sell his Bitcoin to halving either. I thought that was very interesting that he held his Bitcoin and that he is calling for a $20,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. And speaking of Paul Tudor Jones, he got interviewed about his Bitcoin announcement. Of course he did. So let's have a quick listen to see what he had to say about that.
If you just think about, say, Bitcoin versus cash, right? Bitcoin, when I think of stores of value, I think of it four ways: purchasing power, trustworthiness, liquidity, and portability. That's kind of the categories I put it in. So when it comes to trustworthiness, Bitcoin's 11 years old. There's very little trust in it. We're watching the birthing of a store of value, and whether that succeeds or not, only time will tell. What I do know is that every day that goes by and Bitcoin survives, the trust in it will go up. If you take cash, on the other hand, and you think about it from a purchasing power standpoint, if you own cash in the world today, you know your central bank has an avowed goal of depreciating its value 2% per year. So you have, in essence, a wasting asset in your hands. So Bitcoin, I think it's a great speculation. I've got something between 1 and I think just over 1% of my assets in Bitcoin. Maybe it's almost 2.
That is some super interesting commentary there. One thing that really stands out to me, we are watching the birth of a store of value. Crazy, so true, so beautiful. Such an incredible opportunity. Getting in on Bitcoin in 2020 is insane. Oh, sure, 2016 was better. 2012 was even better than that. But we are far from too late. There is still incredible potential. And if someone like Paul Tudor Jones is doing 1% to 2% of his portfolio into Bitcoin, then you know that this is indeed super serious. Personally, I'm way above the 2% mark, but Jones is also spot on about his statements on fiat. Your local central bank is indeed devoted to ruining your long-term wealth. The game's totally rigged. Negative rates, QE infinity, debt bubbles, all the stuff we talk about here on the show on a regular basis. It's totally nuts. And finally, let's hear from Chamath.
Joe, this is again, now you're seeing a lot of lines of different thinking converge. So when we started to believe in the long-term value of Bitcoin, it was as a store of value, and it was that schmuck insurance that you kept under the mattress. And there was a small cohort of us that have believed this for like almost the last 10 years now. But when you have people like Paul Tudor Jones, sophisticated market participants, who don't necessarily come to it from that perspective because he was probably first in gold or curve steepeners or whatever, now all of a sudden even he is looking at Bitcoin. And the reason is because we are in this massive deflationary spiral. And you have to figure out how to protect yourself. And so however you think about it, from a classic economic theory or the schmuck insurance where you're somewhat skeptical of the established governing masses, it is important that we have a hedge, a non-correlated hedge. And I still struggle to find anything that is as uncorrelated to anything else and to everything else than Bitcoin. And I think that, if we see it have its day, it's a moment where you're going to wish that you had just bought the 1% and just kept it.
He knew all along Bitcoin was the one. This guy, by the way, is one of the biggest Bitcoin whales out there. Bitcoin, it is maturing as a store of value, although, of course, it's still early in its price discovery phase, which is obviously where the opportunity lies. Bitcoin is the insurance against the craziness of central banks. Bitcoin is the insurance policy for everyone else. Wall Street gets bailouts from central banks. Well, guess what? For regular people, Bitcoin is the bailout. All you have to do to get your bailout Bitcoin is to trade in your dirty, dirty fiat. Anyway, I play these tips today because I want you to understand. When you bet against Bitcoin, you're also betting against some of the most successful investors in the history of the world. People like Peter Thiel and Tim Draper and Chamath and Paul Tudor Jones, and of course the list is only growing with time. These are the guys that the Bitcoin haters are betting against. And time again, all of the Bitcoin haters, they are proven wrong. It also says a lot to me that even JP Morgan has finally had to concede that fighting Bitcoin, it's a losing battle. There's no point in continuing to try to do it. That story about Gemini and Coinbase finally getting banking services through JP Morgan, it is huge because it shows the capitulation of one of the biggest outspoken Bitcoin hating companies. Now all we have to do is to have JP Morgan announce that they are buying and holding Bitcoin. The circle will be complete. Wah. So your question for today, what percentage of your wealth is sitting in Bitcoin? For me, it's probably around 30%, which I think is a nice little number. Obviously, a lot of other stuff, on top of that, but just in Bitcoin, around 30%. And in addition to what percentage of your wealth is in Bitcoin, do you think that that's the right percentage, or do you want to increase your overall Bitcoin holdings as a percentage of your portfolio? Or do you think maybe you're a little too exposed to Bitcoin and you want to decrease your percentage a little bit? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. As always, you are freaking awesome. So thank you so much for your support. It means everything. This channel is not possible without you. So thank you so much. And of course, if you did enjoy today's video, whack that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Long live the blockchain. And peace out till next time.